Make sure everybody's excited. Good afternoon! Good afternoon! I love it. Thank you. That's how they make you do it in Catholic school, right? I don't know. I didn't go to Catholic school, and I'm a little bit jealous about it, for those who do. I am Chrys Peterson. I am so excited to be your MC and moderator here this afternoon for this Shine event. This is something that is a little more than 3 years in the making. We tried to do this about 3 years ago, and then you know what happened. Best laid plans, and for the last 2 years, the time wasn't right for us all to be together in the theater again. So this is our opportunity to make sure that we are here and fulfilling this wonderful event called Shine. You are going to be totally inspired by what you hear today from our keynote speaker, Dr. Mona, and also from our panelists who are local women with incredible and inspiring stories of their own. It is pretty amazing for all of us to be able to be here and just share our strengths with each other. And that's what I love about this event so much. There is so much talent, so much compassion, so many great strengths that everybody in this room has. Bringing them together makes us a superpower here this afternoon. So I hope that everything that you hear today will help inspire you to continue to raise your voice in our community. And I'm happy to be here and be part of the conversation. I also am excited to bring our keynote guest, Dr. Hanna Attisha, out here to talk with you. How many of you have already read the book? Raise your hand. So we have a few of you who have. It's amazing. She's even more amazing in person, you guys. It's incredible. So I know you're going to love hearing from her. But I also am bucking for the job of president of the Sister Carol Gregory fan club. I have known Carol in this community for a long time. Dr. Mona and I were just talking about if we could just get sisters to run the world, man, stuff would get done, right? And our Sisters of Notre Dame are so incredible. They are so compassionate and pretty sassy, which I love. And Carol has been a wonderful friend to not only Notre Dame, wonderful friend to so many young women who went through Notre Dame High School, who looked to her as a role model, and also a wonderful community member who has pulled so many incredible people together. So without further ado, it's my honor first this afternoon to introduce Sister Carol Gregory.
Thank you, Chrys, for such kind words. Oh, it's wonderful to be here. Thank you. What a wonderful group of women. This is wonderful. The sisters are so happy to have all of you here. I would like you to take a minute and introduce yourself to the women around you. This afternoon, it seems only fitting that we take a moment of silence and pray for our brothers and sisters in Florida and in the Ukraine. So let us take a moment. Thank you. Before we begin, I'd like to thank the people who made this day possible. Our corporate sponsors, the Anderson Foundation, Goldman Sachs, Han Lozier, Mercy Health, SSOE, Sylvania Graphics, Gilmore Jason Mahler, Mansour Wealth Management, ProMedica, Deering Fleet Management, Mercy College of Ohio, and Notre Dame Academy. Also, I wish to thank our major donors who are listed in the program. You know, putting something like this takes a lot of work, and it takes very dedicated volunteers. And we had a special volunteer leadership committee. You'll see their names in the program as well, but I would like them to stand up and let's recognize these ladies. Please stand. Volunteer committee. Thank you. Thank you, ladies. You know, we hope that you will enjoy today's celebration. But today is not just the beginning. And as you know, beginnings take time. And there are always special people that make these events besides our committee, but there's always the leader. And at this time, I would like to recognize the Director of Mission Advancement for our Toledo region, Carrie Rose Rochelle. Carrie came to work for us last October 4th, not quite a year. And I must admit, Carrie has done a remarkable job during this short time with us. Carrie has definitely caught the spirit and the mission of the Sisters of Notre Dame. Carrie has worked tirelessly to make our first Shine Women's Summit a reality and a success. And we are extremely grateful for her dedicated service. So thank you again, Carrie. You know, when people come to work for you, I always say that's God's providence. And truly, it was part of God's providence that we had such a remarkable woman working with us and for us. So thank you again, Carrie. We hope that you will enjoy today, this celebration. But today is not just beginning. It is a beginning of a special Shine movement. And we invite those of you who share or resonate with the Sisters of Notre Dame's passion to help women shine, to join the ongoing effort. There are many organizations working tirelessly to bring good into the community. You saw them out there this afternoon. I believe, and all the Sisters of Notre Dame believe, that let's come together to share our knowledge, our ideas, resources. If you are a part of an organization that serves a mission to support, honor, inspire, nurture, and empower, Shine, please consider working with the Sisters of Notre Dame by taking a seat on our Shine Coalition of Northwest Ohio. So many times we work too much in silos. And let's join and see what more we can do together. Many years ago, I lived in a convent next to a cemetery. And you'd probably say, that's not too exciting, is it? Neighbors were really quiet. The convent was Jesu Convent on Parkside Boulevard, and the cemetery, Calvary. Every day, I would walk in the cemetery and pray. One day, there was a tombstone that caught my eye. And there was a quote on the tombstone that read, "I have loved the stars too fondly to be ever fearful of the night." I have loved the stars too fondly to be ever fearful of the night. Who are the stars in my life? I would meditate on that. Who are they? How have I been or continue to be a star in someone's life? How can I be a star in someone's life today? Who helped me when I was fearful of the night? Or who did I help when they were fearful? And so I ask each of you women, who are the stars in your life? Who gives you encouragement? Who do you support, honor, inspire, nurture, empower? In this audience, I look there are moms, grandmothers, maybe great-grandmoms. There are coaches, colleagues, doctors, lawyers, businesswomen, directors of organizations, and the list goes on. There are about 250, 300 women here. Women, you, who are stars. Women who shine. Women who share your many gifts. I encourage you to continue to be that star. Continue to shine. Be that star for someone. Be that star for the people you meet on a daily basis. We as women are all gifted. We are women. We are gifted with womanhood. By our very nature, God created us to generate life, to bring forth life, physical life, spiritual life, emotional life, intellectual life, but to bring life into our world. So continue, let us continue to be the woman God created you and me to be. Continue to share your life, your gifts. Share your values, your principles of life, your philosophy of life, your morals, your spirituality. Bring the peace, the joy, the love, the patience, the forgiveness into our world. Our world is filled, you know that, and I know that, of violence, hatred, greed. And at times it becomes very scary. But I believe that we, women, can bring forth the light so that we, here throughout the world, restore our humanness that is so necessary in our world today. This afternoon, you will hear 5 outstanding women who will tell a little of their life story to me, and I am sure you will also agree after you hear them speak. They are making a difference. They have made a difference in our world. They are bringing life to many. They are the stars. Remember, I have loved the stars too fondly to be ever fearful of the night. They are women who shine, women who support, honor, inspire, nurture, empower others. And remember, ladies, you too are a star and continue to shine. I pray that love be with you, peace and joy surround you always, and the presence of God give you courage and strength to shine.
How many people count Sister Carol among their stars? Thank you so much, Sister Carol. It doesn't matter if she's speaking for 2 minutes or 20 minutes. I always feel inspired and empowered whenever I'm around her. She gives me confidence somehow, which I love. So thank you, Carol, for doing that for so many of us. Okay, I have a little announcement that I just want to make sure we take care of before we go any farther. There is a Jeep Limited, white Jeep Limited in the parking lot with P579358. P579358. And it's still running, apparently. The first time I got my hybrid car, I left it running for 2 hours while I went to Barcelona. I was so happy they didn't tow it away or somebody drive away. Somebody found that car still running out there. Okay, it is now time for us to meet our keynote speaker and guest here today. Dr. Hanna Attisha is founder and director of the Michigan State University and Hurley Children's Hospital Pediatric Public Health Initiative, an innovative and model public health program in Flint, Michigan. A pediatrician, scientist, activist, and author, Dr. Hanna Attisha has testified 4 times before the United States Congress and was awarded the Freedom of Expression Courage Award by PEN America. She was named one of Time Magazine's 100 most influential people of the world and recognized as one of USA Today's Women of the Century for her role in uncovering the Flint water crisis and leading recovery efforts, and most recently received the 2020 CDC Foundation's Freeze Prize for Improving Health. A frequent contributor to national media outlets, including the New York Times and Washington Post, Dr. Mona has appeared on CNN, MSNBC, BBC, and countless other outlets championing the cause of children in Flint and beyond. She is the founding donor of the Flint Child Health and Development Fund, which you can find at flintkids.org. With concentrations in environmental health and health policy, Dr. Mona received a bachelor degree and Master of Public Health degree from the University of Michigan and completed her medical degree from Michigan State University College of Human Medicine and her residency at Children's Hospital of Michigan in Detroit, where she was chief resident. She is currently a Charles Stewart Mott Endowed Professor of Public Health and an Associate Professor of Pediatrics and Human Development at Michigan State University College of Human Medicine. Today, she's here to discuss her experience of lifting her voice to shine a public light on the effects of the Flint water crisis, as she describes in her book, What the Eyes Don't See. Please help me give a warm Northwest Ohio welcome to Dr. Mona.
Thank you. It is, first of all, so amazing to be here. Thank you for welcoming me. This has literally been 3 years in the making, and I'm so glad it's finally happened. I'm so excited to be here with you, Chrys.
I know, it's really exciting. We've been waiting for this a long time. So just to give you some context, your book had pretty much just come out when we first started talking to you about coming and speaking here.
It's been a minute, yeah.
But I'm almost glad we get you 3 years later. We've been through the last couple of years that really relates and connects dots back to what you went through.
Absolutely. There's folks who've read my book recently and they're like, oh my gosh, did you know there was going to be a pandemic when you wrote your book? And I'm like, no. I think some people did, but I didn't know there was going to be a pandemic, but very, very similar lessons that I'm sure we'll talk about.
So I have like 6 hours worth of questions here for Dr. Mona, so you guys just have to totally stick with me here. I promise I won't keep you after 6 o'clock. But I just want to start out with just your beginnings. When did you know and why did you become a pediatrician? When did you know you wanted to do that?
That's an awesome question, and I had the amazing honor and privilege of going to the Notre Dame Academy earlier today and speaking with some amazing girls. And that was, I think, the first question that they asked me is, when and why did you decide to become a pediatrician? And what I shared with these girls is that the path from like where you are now to where you want to be is rarely a straight line. And there was detours along the way, and then it came to be. So I started out kind of my career as an environmentalist. I was really into environmental advocacy. We had an incinerator in our nearby neighborhood when I was a kid, and it was polluting and kids were sick, and that really pushed me to go into like environmental science in college. And then I wanted to learn about environmental health. Like, wait a minute, all these bad things in the environment are hurting people, and like, who are they often hurting the most? It's kids. And that kind of pushed me to medicine and pediatrics. So the path was zigzaggy, and not kind of what I ever thought it would be. But I think I was kind of grounded with some values that I was raised with, and I think one was service, the responsibility that we have to give back, and that was solidified in a lot of my training and service learning and different things. I went to a Catholic grade school too, so yeah, you missed out. We had an amazing sister Rita, so like Sister Carol, but also kind of the value system that was instilled in me and my family of once again of giving. And I came from an immigrant family, and a lot of kind of that upbringing was about recognizing how lucky we were to be in this country, but how we had an obligation to give back. So I think those are some of the reasons that pushed me to pediatrics, and I think the most important reason that pushed me to pediatrics is it's so much fun. So I'm still a pediatrician. I was in clinic a couple weeks ago, and one of the favorite questions I love to ask kids is, what do you want to be when you grow up? And there was a 4-year-old who was in for his checkup, and I'm like, so what do you want to do when you grow up? And he's like, I want to be 5. So it's amazing. And so it's my job as a pediatrician to make sure they get to 5. Yeah. But also to make sure that they have the brightest Iraq, where one day Saddam Hussein woke up and poisoned an entire village of Kurds, and 5,000 people died that day. And he showed me this picture when I was 10 or 11. Probably shouldn't have done that. Like, I was a kid. But my parents kind of raised us to know, that there's injustices in the world, and that we have a role to play. So I definitely think that background and that perspective, opened my eyes, pushed me to service, led me to work in places like Detroit and Flint, and gave me this heightened antenna to recognize injustice when it was happening.
You were, we often hear about this person was the right person at the right time. Your background as an environmentalist, your work as a pediatrician, your work as a researcher, you have lots of residents that are reporting to you, have relationships with them as well. So all of those things are part of who you are, and you lay it out.
So the water wasn't treated properly, which made it super corrosive, and it went through this old, aging infrastructure. Like most of the infrastructure in our country, we haven't invested in infrastructure in a long time. We'll get to the new Infrastructure Act later. So old, outsized. The population of Flint is half of what it used to be. No updates because the city was so poor. And it's in, these old pipes were made of lead, as well as the lead in your plumbing. And that is throughout this country, predominantly in the Midwest and the Northeast, where we have literally a poison with no safe level delivering our drinking water. I've had the privilege, as mentioned, to testify before Congress, and the last 2 times I testified before Congress was about the National Infrastructure Act. And I held in my hand, it unfortunately was virtual, but one benefit of being virtual, I had a lead pipe in my hand, which you can't take a lead pipe in the table, especially not anymore. But I had a lead pipe in my hand, and it was a pipe that was one of the first pipes that was excavated in Flint. And I held up the lead pipe, we'll pretend it's a lead pipe, and it looked like a straw, and I put it up towards my camera, and just to show the policymakers, like, millions of children are drinking through a straw made of a poison with no safe level. And the good news, because I've got so much good news, there's been so much positive, so much shining, awesome things that have happened, is that Infrastructure Act that passed did include billions of dollars to replace our nation's lead pipes. So that is a story, this is not a story just about Flint, and our work is not just about Flint, it's about kids and communities everywhere, and how to essentially, invest in those tomorrows so those kids can be 5 and beyond.
Right. So think about water, right? And we don't even think about it until there's a problem. And about a year before Dr. Mona is starting to discover this, how many of you guys remember the Toledo water crisis, right? I mean, it happened here. Ours was not the same issue, but what I'm saying is there are things that we take so for granted as a right of our home ownership and our tax money and all of that, kind of.
You're part of the cheer benefit from this. 2 teenage girls now, so the day after my friend tells me about lead and water, like pure serendipity, I have a meeting with the local health department, like the dude in charge of the lead programming for the county. Like literally the day after, previously scheduled. And I'm like, hey, I heard about the possibility of lead and water. What's going on? Have you guys seen this? Have you heard this? Any changes you're seeing in blood levels of children? Because that's part of county and health department surveillances. And his response was, well, water's not in our jurisdiction. I'm like, wait a minute, this is health? This is like public health? Like, we taxpayers pay to make sure that our water is safe and our air is clean. Like, isn't that part of this like social contract that we have? So it was shocking to have all these doors closed at many levels of government when I was interacting with people whose job was to keep us safe. And in my head, I had imagined people in like lab coats and test tubes and making sure that things are safe for us, no matter if we live in Toledo or Flint or where have you. And I was, that's not what I came across.
I mean, we bathe in it, we drink it, we use it for cooking, we fill baby bottles with it, with formula, right? We mix lemonade with it, all of these things that we are doing. And you write that safe until proven dangerous has been kind of the standard that people are following. But wouldn't you guys be shocked by that? I was shocked by that. I would think that, again, like you, I'm thinking there's somebody testing this water every day or making sure that it is safe for us all to drink, like these little gremlins are out there, just like, or fairies, just doing all this magical work. But that is not the truth. And I think a lot of us do think that. should we not have as much faith and hope in those agencies as we probably do?
That's a great question. So I think, before all this, I, like all of you, despite having an environmental health background, a medical degree, a public health background, had a lot of faith and trust in regulations and policies to keep us maximally protected. And what I've come to learn is that we have a long way to go to ensure people are safe. And a lot of this is kind of out of sight, out of mind for folks, and a lot of special interests want us to believe that things are safe when they're really not safe. This safe until proven dangerous, I have to share because the book is also a tribute to so many of my heroes. And one of my heroes, who you should all know about, many of you probably do, is a woman named Alice Hamilton. She was a fighter, a physician. She graduated medical school from Michigan in 1893. Then she went to work with Jane Addams in Chicago at the Hull House, providing care for immigrants and poor people. And while she was there, providing care, she began to recognize that a lot of people who are coming in to see me are sick because of something they're exposed to in their jobs. Like the people who make hats, were coming in like Mad Hatters, so exposed to mercury. And the folks that were working with lead were coming with seizures and tremor and all these problems. So she quickly became, in the early 1900s, our nation's expert on occupational health and medicine. She is known as the mother of the field of occupational medicine. She's the very first woman professor at Harvard. But this is a digression, but it's so good because it's about strong women. And there was 3 rules for her when she started at Harvard as the first woman. She couldn't go to football games, okay? She couldn't go to the faculty club, and she couldn't march in commencement. So a few years ago, I got to deliver the commencement address at Harvard Medical School. And of course I talked about Alice, and I had all the women faculty stand up and have us celebrate them. So anyways, a century ago, she was our nation's expert in occupational medicine, and she was also our nation's lead expert. And in the 1920s, do you guys remember what we wanted to put lead in? Gasoline. In the 1920s, General Motors and Standard Oil, put lead in gasoline, and she went after them and said, "You can't do this. It's a poison. We know it's a poison." A century ago.
And it was supposed to take the knock out of your engine,
yes.
Right? It was like to keep it quiet.
Yes, it was the General Motors is the only solution to engine knocking, which is that loud noise when fuel and air mix. And we've tried everything else. There's no alternative. We have to put lead in gasoline, and they patented tetraethyl lead. And they made a killing on tetraethyl lead and literally poisoned generations of children. But she went after them with all her might. And it finally got to the Surgeon General at that time. And General Motors kind of made a deal with the devil. And they said, maybe not go to the Catholic audience. So General Motors said, they made a deal with the Surgeon General. And they said, if anybody can prove that lead is bad, we'll take it out. And this was the General Motors scientist who did this. His last name is Kehoe. I think he's actually he worked with Kettering. I think there were some Ohio roots, so we won't blame you. And so this is known as the Kehoe paradigm, that things are safe until proven guilty. And this principle persists to this day. We assume everything is safe. Plastics and dioxin and PFAS and PFOA, the list goes on. We let industry and put food additives and all these different things. We just assume things are safe until scientists and people spend decades, generations proving something is not safe. And then even when they've done that, it's almost impossible to reverse damage and get something banned. So the opposite, assuming something's bad until proven safe, is something called the precautionary principle, erring on the side of precaution. That's the direction we should be going, but hasn't been followed. But yay, Alice Hamilton, read about her, she's amazing.
We learned about a new strong woman who is shining here today, which is awesome. You eventually take all the findings that you have. You have research, you and your researcher, Jenny,
boss, amazing.
at Hurley, and you are putting all these numbers out, you're letting people know, you are making contacts with people, you have people that are agreeing with you, and yet somehow when you call this news conference the very first time to tell everyone what is happening, people are kind of backing out or backing away from you in that moment. Did that devastate you, that people were just not willing to stand up for the problem?
Absolutely. So, we did the science, and it was common sense science. Like, there was a lot of lead in our water. Like, yes, there's going to be more lead in our children. We double-checked it, triple-checked it. There was lots of imposter syndrome stuff going on. Like, maybe I don't know what I'm doing, or maybe someone else should do this. But, like, our science was so solid. And we were trying to create a team, right? And we had unexpected allies, which was awesome. But then folks that you figured should be on your side, weren't on your side. And then when we did finally share that research, there was a lot of folks who weren't on our side. But
they actually tried to discredit your science.
Oh, yeah. And so after I shared this research at a press conference, which is not what academics do. You publish, but that takes a long time.
And kudos to the Hurley leadership, because they were behind you 100%.
Girl boss CEO, amazing woman who had my back. And was like, Mona, we're at Children's Hospital, we have to do this is our job. And so she supported me, which was amazing. And I get up at a press conference, which once again is not what doctors do. We publish and do our work in peer-reviewed journals. One of my favorite accolades I've gotten throughout this whole process is an award from MIT called the Disobedience Award for being academically disobedient. That was hard to explain to my kids, though. Do your homework. So I felt great after sharing the science, because I'm just sharing science. Can you imagine being in the middle of a public health crisis and not listening to science? So I'm just sharing science, and I felt great protecting kids, sharing science, and the state and all, multiple arms of the state, went after me, including saying that I was causing near hysteria, which we know is sexist. That word hysterical has been thrown against so many women over time. Saying that I was an unfortunate researcher, splicing dice, the list goes on and on. I was also attacked. Just like everybody else in the story who had raised any concerns was also attacked.
Yeah. I'm going to get back to the woman thing in a moment, but I know you're a person of faith. Did that help you during that? Like, what is sustaining you when you are standing there alone? I know you had some allies that were with you, but you really are just taking the brunt of all of this. Hysteria, discrediting your science, you're standing there trying to fight for the kids. How did you keep moving forward when all of that barrage of hatred was coming at you?
That's a great question, and something that we talked about with the kids earlier today. It was this kind of quick recognition that it wasn't about me. So all the attacks that were leveled at me, like, it didn't matter. Like, this was not about Mona and my career or any of that. That this was about something bigger. It was about my kids. It was about my patients. Like, as a physician, I have literally taken an oath to protect children. But physician or not, this is about who we are, right? This is our civic responsibility. This is what it means to be part of a community, that you take care of each other. So being grounded in that is what lifted me up. Like, after being attacked by the state, that night, I was literally had a cover over my head. I felt this big. I felt tiny, defeated. I started beginning to second guess myself. I got physically sick. And, but then I realized, once again, this is not about you, Mona. Your research was numbers and statistics, you showed this, but every single number was a kid. A kid I'd probably seen that within a year and cared for. I knew them, I examined them, I felt their heartbeats. I asked them that question, what you want to be when you grow up. These were about kids. And it was almost as if they jumped out of my spreadsheets, these kids, and they lifted me up and they gave me the courage to keep going. So for me, it was being grounded in my why. My North Star are children. Like, that's why I went to school, that's why I wrote the book, that's why I'm here, is kids. And we all have different whys. And I think if we can ground ourselves in that why, and our why may change over the course of our lives, and that's totally cool too. But I think, that allowed me to keep going. And I do it to this day. Like, I'll like, Mona, what's today about? Like, why are you doing this? Like, to re-ground myself. And if the answer is not kids, I'm not going to do it.
Yeah. So, there's a happy ending to this story. I want to know what the moment was like when all these naysayers, Governor Snyder and all of his people, come to your office
That scene.
and have to say, you were right?
So this is awesome. Read the book. But so I'm a pediatrician, and it is a very female-dominant profession. About 70+% of pediatricians are women. And I'm used to being around a lot of women, and also a lot of women of color. Like, it's very diverse. So like, I'm used to like women, darker women in white coats. Like, that's a lot of kind of my colleagues. And in comes like, all of these people into my office who are all white men in dark suits. And in many subsequent meetings with the same kind of dynamic. And my jaw would drop. Like, I literally, I have no poker face at all. And like, my jaw would drop, and I'd be like, do you think this is part of the problem? Like, where are the women? Like, where are the women? And where are the women? And where are the people of color? Where's representation? So, I was not looking for any kind of apology. And I worked with that administration, this administration. I'm going to be working with the next 5 administrations to make sure kids get what they need for the long term. And that was also very kind of sometimes challenging. And people would come up to me, they're like, how are you talking to these people? They should be in jail. And I'm like, my constituency is children, and I have to work with whomever to get what kids need.
Yeah, some people were charged criminally with this.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So this did become
Oh,
a huge thing
ongoing.
In the long run. Do you think it would have been different? Would people have listened to you differently if you had not been a woman?
Oh, that is a great question. There was also...
Did it help you or hurt you, or maybe both in some different ways?
I don't know, because I think a lot of it had to do with what I said earlier. Like, being a woman for me is a superpower. Being an immigrant, being a person of color, all these things are superpower strengths. And I leaned on those superpower strengths. And I was, I call it pleasantly persistent in all of my communications. Maybe like really annoying and stubborn. And it was kind of that drive that I think so many of us have to get the answers that we want. I see it as a strength. I don't know how the story would have been different if I was a different person. But all kinds of folks were being dismissed in the story.
Let's talk a little bit about vetting information, because you did put these numbers out there. Other people were putting other numbers out there and trying to refute what you were saying, but it wasn't at all comparing apples to apples. Mm-hmm. But, science and media have both been drugged through the ringer, I feel like, over the last several years, especially during COVID, all the different information, communication that was put out there. And those were 2 of your best friends during your crisis. So how do we vet that information and know what is right when anybody can just put whatever they want to out there?
Sure, that's a great question. And I think the unsung heroes of this story, and so many of the stories that we hear about are journalists. You guys have amazing journalists here. Tom Henry, I think, or Tim Henry from the Toledo Blade was in Flint, a great environmental reporter. I just connected with him recently. But if you look at the state of good print investigative reporters, like, we don't have as many as we used to. And these are supposed to be kind of our trusted eyes on the ground because we can't be everywhere. So how do we bolster that voice? So many folks are like, well, what can I do to save the world? I'm like, subscribe to your local paper.
Right.
And I have subscriptions to like every paper I can imagine, just so that I can support that profession, that industry, so that I'm aware of things and can know about that. I think it's important to build relationships with trusted media sources, and also to be better digesters of information. And it's hard, and I see it now in the pandemic, like my conversations with parents about immunizations. This is bread and butter pediatrics. Like I had, this is way before the pandemic, we would sit down and have conversations. And I want parents to ask some questions. I don't want them to blindly trust these are the vaccines you're getting at the formal visit.
Right.
Like I want them to ask, like, what's this for, and why do I need it, and some of the side effects. Like that's awesome, and maybe they'll get it, but maybe the next visit we'll have another conversation, and maybe the third visit after that, then they'll get it. So it's about rapport building and trust building, and also about directing people to credible information. Like, here is the American Academy of Pediatrics website. No, don't go to that website. And kind of guiding people that to be good kind of good information kind of garners, but it's hard because there's so much stuff out there. You can go online and find a theory that that supports anything you want to believe.
Right. And therein lies the problem, right? We all have access and have ability to post or have an opinion or whatever.
Yeah.
So you have your situation was out there during COVID. It's out there. It's kind of like building the plane while you're flying it, right? Because as you go, things were coming in fast and furious in those instances. But I feel like there is a trust that needs to be rebuilt or just reestablished somehow. How do we do that?
Oh, that is a great question. So I went to a conference with philosophers, and it was just about trust. Because the acute and effect of our crisis was this broken trust. But it was kind of already really on shaky grounds because of the kind of decades of crisis and neglect and disinvestment and racism and all these things that made the people in Flint almost think that this was a purposeful poisoning. Like trust was already shattered. And then this happened, and they're like, wait a minute, you told me my water was safe and it wasn't, and you lied to me, and there's criminality. So trust is gone. And then COVID happens, and we're like, get this vaccine. You're like, yeah, right, I'm going to get this vaccine. You told me my water was safe, and now you're going to get this vaccine.
And also, it only took 6 months to develop it. Which to me was so interesting too, because I'm thinking, oh my gosh, look at our innovation and our amazing science and our scientists and what they've been able to accomplish.
Yeah.
But that wasn't really the message that came out of
No,
all
and
that.
it was really built on like decades of research.
Right. This wasn't 6 months. This was like, years.
And then also in many of these communities, like there is good reason, like in Flint, to have lost trust.
Yeah.
I make sure my students learn about like the Tuskegee experiments and what happened to Henrietta Lacks, where they stole her and read the immortal life of Henrietta Lacks and the heal itself. So there's so many historic situations where certain communities have given trust but have had that trust been betrayed. So building trust takes time. It takes commitment. And I think another thing that I've learned that it takes, and this is something I used to not get involved in, it takes justice and restorative justice. So we talked about criminal charges, and there was civil cases, and there's all those lawyers and litigation, and I used to be like, and that's not my problem, ask somebody else, I'm just a doctor taking care of kids, like, I don't know who should go to jail or why. But then, like, I began to really see firsthand that it's also a health issue. Like, our trauma is like a wound, right? It's an open wound. And without truth and accountability and restorative justice, that wound stays open. So you need all of that to heal and to have closure and to move on. And I think that's not just about Flint, but for so many of our communities that have had historic injustices that we've never really come to terms with.
So what's the situation in Flint right now?
Great question. We are almost done replacing our lead pipes.
I've had a lot of great questions.
This is amazing. this kind of groundwork, pardon the pun, for this kind of work to happen nationally. I lead this amazing initiative with an amazing team who wears their heart on their sleeves, lots of women on my team. We actually, I had to look for a guy because we had no guy faculty. We didn't have to. So, doing that important work to mitigate the impact of this crisis, putting into place things like early childhood and trauma-informed care and Medicaid expansion and nutrition prescriptions and literacy programs, and the list goes on and on of all the awesome that we've been able to do, which should have been there before because we know the basic ingredients that kids need to be healthy. They need good food, they need good family environment, they need good education. So lots of awesome things are happening in Flint that is once again sharing not just a story of one city that had this bad thing, but really a story of resistance, of how to fight the status quo, of how to create change and how to build hope in a community.
That was one of the great things about the story is finally when they were ready to just acquiesce, they came in and said, okay, here are all these millions of dollars. They gave you almost every single thing you wanted.
Yeah, I think they were scared of me.
In terms of, 5 foot tall. In terms of mitigation, it wasn't just about the water though. It was about repairing what might have been done in the meantime.
Absolutely.
And they were able to do that, and those programs are running as well.
And we write grants every day to try to kind of maintain them and also to share them. I'll share one quick story, one of my favorite stories, my favorite things I've done. My pediatric clinic is on the second floor of a farmer's market, and we moved there on purpose because we don't have a lot of access to grocery stores. And after we moved there, every kid that came to clinic, no matter if it was an ear infection or a checkup, they get a prescription for fruits and vegetables that now has a $15 value, printed just like amoxicillin, like in our electronic medical record, and they fill it in the farmer's market. And I have scientists on my team, public health nutritionists, PhDs, they've been assessing it and noticed the impact it has on improving family nutrition security and education, all these great outcomes. And one of our U.S. senators, Debbie Stabenow, who's really into agriculture, she was the co-chair of the co-sponsor of the Farm Bill. She had been to our clinic, she knew our program, and so she included it in the National Farm Bill. First at $25 million a couple years ago, and it just increased to $40 million. So this little thing that we did in our clinic to address good, healthy food in a place that is a food desert is now a national program that's been going on for years that will benefit kids and families all over. So just one example of kind of how we've been able to shine and kind of share that work all over.
Toledo has actually been a leader in the social determinants of health and thinking about those types of things. Fresh fruits and vegetables, where, how your zip code affects your health care, which is so important. Is there anything that when you look back on it, you wish you had done differently, or anything that you're doing differently now in your practice based on what you learned?
Oh, that's a great question. The amazing high schoolers also asked me that today. One thing I wish I would have done differently, I wish I would have heard about lead earlier. It was a year and a half into this crisis before I did anything. And once I heard, my life changed, and I did. So I wish I would have learned earlier. But I think what I do differently is kind of the village that I've been able to create. I think obviously we already knew about the social determinants and about all these different factors that impact the lives of folks. Before the water crisis, I used to hang out with a lot of people that were just like me, like other academic pediatricians, and we'd go to our same kind of conferences, and I kind of used to think that we had a monopoly on caring for kids. Who cares about kids more than pediatricians? And what I loved gotten proven wrong is that, oh my gosh, so many other people care about the same things that I care about. My best friend in the story was a water engineer. Who knew they cared about kids? And so do lawyers, and so do journalists, and so do social workers, and so do so many other people. So my family, my village is big, and they're unexpected. And I think one of the greatest lessons is that we need to make relationships and networks with people who are different than us and come from different backgrounds than us and different professions and different walks of life and different whatever, because we ask different questions and we look at problems and we solve them differently. And, you know, and we're just so much stronger as a team. And as cheesy as it sounds, like it's so important. So get out of those silos. We heard about silos earlier. Make friends with unexpected partners, and you truly can accomplish more.
You actually had a moment where you were really surprised to find out that somebody that was working super close with you was a flaming Republican. And this was just like, wait a minute, what? Republicans care about kids? No.
Yes, they do.
No, I know that wasn't, but you were surprised at kind of learning that. And so I do think it kind of speaks to, we do all kind of see things from our own experience and our own, and there is another side of the coin all the time,
Absolutely.
right?
It's so true in healthcare. Like, it's doctors like driving to work and, you know, drive out and don't interact with the communities often that we're privileged to serve. So, you know, I think part of this is making friends with unexpected folks, but also humbly, you know, taking a step back and listening and really kind of working shoulder to shoulder with folks that we think that we're serving, but are we really serving when we're telling them this is what you need to do? Sometimes serving is also just listening and, you know, and responding to what they would do. So in my initiative, what kind of institutionalized that listening. I have a parent partner group, this amazing group of parents that advise us. I have, my favorite thing, I have a youth advisory group, and they've named themselves the Flint Youth Justice League. So they're like, I love that. They're amazing, and they have a superhero logo they created. And they are national, like, youth advocates on issues of, like, water and environmental justice. And when, after Flint happened, there was a similar water crisis in Newark, New Jersey, and my kids were Zooming with kids in Newark and telling them, this is what a park rebellion is. Like, oh my God, I have to go so being intentional in inclusion and once again, kind of humility and listening.
I think I've taken up a lot of time. We have a couple minutes for some questions. If anybody in the audience has some questions, before we sign out, I've got one right here.
How much can you repair the damage that was done?
From lead poisoning?
Yeah.
So how is it possible to repair what has been damaged?
That's a great question. So in public health, there's this concept of primary prevention, where you're never supposed to expose a population to something like lead because it is an irreversible neurotoxin. It doesn't mean everybody's going to have the same problems. Some kids, you may not see anything. Some kids, will have more problems. Two kids could be exposed to the same amount. One kid goes to Harvard. One kid needs special ed their whole life. So there's lots of other factors that come into play, from nutrition and other kind of mitigating risk factors. So since I can't write a magic pill or an antidote, our response has really kind of been driven by what can we do to mitigate, to buffer, to lessen the exposure. And that's where all these awesome things that we've been able to put into place, like child development programs and early literacy and brand new child care centers and maternal infant health programs and home visiting and after school programs. Like, these are just common sense things that kids need that are evidence-based, science-proven to improve health and development. We didn't have them before. Everybody needs them, but it's especially important now to do what we call secondary prevention, which is after an exposure, to mitigate any potential consequences. We are funded by the CDC, the Center of Disease Control, Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, on this massive effort called the Flint Registry, which is following people over time. But more importantly, it's not just about surveillance or research. It's about getting them, seeing how they're doing, and then connecting them to all this awesome that our community has put together, and ironically, awesome things that we then needed during the pandemic. So in some ways, the water crisis was a dress rehearsal for the pandemic. We had built this public health infrastructure, and when the pandemic hit, people needed emergency food, and they needed mental health care, and they needed medical home access, and that's the stuff that we've already built.
You were prepared for that.
You were prepared, yeah.
Better prepared than a lot of other communities.
Sure. Yeah, our water, distribution sites became testing sites, became vaccine sites. We were used to working with United Way in this place and that place, so it was, a little bit of a blessing in disguise.
Yeah.
Attacked me, I, didn't give up, proved my science was right, and the state finally went back and looked at their data. They had this data, this was surveillance data, and they're like, oh yes, we actually see the same thing you're finding, and then conceded.
Anybody else?
So they had the data the whole time too.
One more question, got you.
In your book, you write about two Americas. What advice would you give to make our present America a better place to live?
Oh my gosh, I think we could spend an hour on this question. And so you ask about the two Americas that I write in this book and what advice that I would give. The American dream that I and my family were privileged to be beneficiaries of, that we talk about so much, this concept of the American promise, that you can lift yourself up and you can be anything, that doesn't exist for so many of our children and communities. A kid in Flint has a 20-year difference life expectancy than a kid in another part of our county, in the county. Differences based on zip codes, color of skin, state of birth, country of origin, drinking water source, all of these things make, not for our American dream, but for a nightmare for so many of our children. My kids in Flint have a 60% poverty rate, child poverty rate. We could just talk for hours about child poverty and the failure of this nation to fix that, because we can fix that. We fixed elder poverty with Social Security. We can fix child poverty. We had a little good blip with the child tax credit, but that expired. There's things that we need to do to make that American dream possible for all of our kids, so that when I ask a kid once again if what they want to be when they grow up, they really can become whatever they set out to be. So there's a lot that we can do. I wrote a piece in the New York Times a few years ago called "I'm sick of asking children to be resilient." Like, we put so much on victims to do more. Read more to your kid. Like, sign up for this program, this after-school program. It's a lot of what we're doing in Flint. Like, do this, fill this nutrition prescription. But what if we instead build a community, a society that is more resilient, that kids had, universal education, clean air, clean water, healthcare that wasn't tethered to employment, like all these things that are standards in other countries that make room for resilient communities, so that our kids could just be kids. So, thank you.
I know that you are just moving forward all the time. She's
Yes.
on the hamster wheel, right? So there's not a whole lot of time, maybe even, to look back. But I hope that you've had some time to just sit in your accomplishment and your success here with this, Dr. Mona, because the ripple effects of what you've done in Flint, not only impacting the lives of thousands of children who were there already, but also generations to come who will benefit from what has been done and what will continue to be done in Flint. And they don't have to worry about somebody making decisions based on money or what they cost, right? So I am in total awe. I'm like fangirling over Dr.
You're into a
Mona.
selfie.
I think she is a rock star.
You're a rock
and
star.
Thank you so much.
Will have a chance to get your book signed by Dr. Mona after our panel discussion. So we're going to let her rest for a minute, and we're going to take a little break. Right now, I'm looking at my...
I like your glasses. Oh, yeah. Thank you. I wake up in the morning. All right, go first, right? Yeah. Is she here? She's in the yellow.
Kim, how are you? Good, how are you? Good to see you. Forever. Yeah. This was great, don't you think? Yeah. Look at your hair straightened like that.
All right.
No, I haven't been chopped yet, but maybe. Bye, really quickly. Okay, Kitty, we're waiting on you. Excuse me, are you done taking pictures?
And guess what? The bar will be open for a full hour plus after we get finished here, and you guys can have all sorts of visit times when we're done. We are so lucky to have a really special panel of women here with us this afternoon, who are all our friends and neighbors from Northwest Ohio. And we're just going to have a little chat about, just like on Saturday Night Live, right? I'm the church lady. Oh no, I think we decided I wasn't the church lady, right? Yeah, I'm the public school lady. But just to kind of
see how we all use our different strengths and what it takes to be strong, to give your talents, to be resilient in the face of adversity. And I think we all have something to share with each other, and these four ladies are incredible. So I'm going to start to my immediate left. We are so lucky to have the first female chief in the history of the city. Chief Allision Armstrong is a rock star. If you follow her on social media, you'll see that her involvement goes way beyond the fire department. And the way we're going to do this is just to let each person, as I introduce them, just say a little about themselves. So just tell us kind of, are you from Toledo? Tell us about your family, and tell us how long you've been with the fire department, Chief.
Thank you, Chris. I was born and raised in Toledo, so went to Chrys Peterson and then Central Catholic. And then eventually Mercy College, but I've been a Toledo firefighter for 22 years. So my goal in life was always to be a Toledo firefighter. As a young girl, that's just what I wanted to do, and I wasn't going to let anything stop me from doing that. So I achieved that goal in 2000, but in the meantime, I'd gone to nursing school in case I couldn't be a firefighter for whatever reason. So, and then 2008, I had a son. I have a 14-year-old son named Nicholas, and Nicholas has a lot of medical problems, so we deal with a lot there. He's had 18 surgeries. And then over the course from 2008 to present, got promoted 4 times at the Fire and Rescue Department, ultimately becoming chief. Finished 2 more degrees. I think I have a problem sitting still. So I like to do 10 things at once. It makes me happy, it makes me fulfilled. But in my current role, I'm in charge of the Fire and Rescue Department. I have 580 uniformed employees, 18 stations across the city. And I am honored and humbled to have this position. I think it's a great fit. I love interacting with the public. I love our fire department. We have great people, and so I just look forward to making the department better, and I can work another 13 years, so hoping to achieve some long-term goals.
Awesome. To the chief's left is another rock star of our community, another shero. We got a bunch of sheros up here. Practicing attorney and president of Connecting Kids to Meals, Wendi Huntley. So Wendy's had a really, we heard Dr. Mona talk about how what you start off with is never really where you end up with, right? And you have had a crazy interesting journey to get where you are right now. And I'm going to talk more about it. I'm going to ask some questions, but I'm going to let you introduce yourself the way that you'd like to the crowd.
Thank you, Chris. First of all, just honored to be on this panel and to participate in such an amazing event. I did wear my plaid, my golden I grew up here in Toledo. I went to Ladyfield for elementary school. Oh, right. Notre Dame Academy, obviously, and then I went to Bowling Green State University and earned a college scholarship playing basketball there, and then I went on to the Ohio State University and practiced for about 12 years with a large law firm there, and then I left and started my own firm and moved back to Toledo about 10 years ago. My father was sick at the time, so I just picked up and left to help my mom and my sister, and came back and started working with a different hunger relief organization and ended up as the president of Connecting Kids to Meals about 7 years ago. I'm just really honored and privileged to sit in that seat to lead such an important organization that fills a critical need in our community as it relates to child food insecurity.
Wendi, can you give everyone just very quickly a kind of a snapshot of Connecting Kids to Meals and how many meals you serve in a day?
Sure. We have about 185 partners. We provide meals during after-school hours, as well as during the summer months. And so during the academic year, we have about 70 partners and serve around 22 to 2,500 meals a day. And then in the summer months, we have about 150 partners, and we serve anywhere from 5,000 to 6,000 meals a day. To date, we served over 7 million, close to 8 million meals, and just last year, about 776,000.
Unbelievable.
I'm grateful for my staff because people don't realize we get to sit on stage, we get to do the interviews, we get to be out front, but it's truly, truly about my staff. So
I've seen you make sandwiches before too.
I can do that.
I know you get your hands dirty in there too. But you do have an amazing staff, and they just do unbelievable work, and we'll talk more about it as we get through our panel. Sister Suzette Fisher is with us. She is a Notre Dame sister and founder of Double Arc. So for folks who don't know what Double Arc is, tell us what that is.
Well, with Double Arc, we serve children and their families affected by prenatal alcohol exposure, fetal alcohol spectrum disorders. That's been in existence 30 years, and so we truly work with kids and their families.
It's a lot, it's pretty similar to what Dr. Mona was talking about, working with kids exposed to lead, right?
Yes.
Because it's, again, being exposed to a toxin, and it has all sorts of effects on you physiologically.
Right, prenatal alcohol is also a neurotoxin.
Yeah. So, sister, how long have you been in Toledo?
Well, I grew up in Fremont, Ohio, and I've been in and out of, I've been a sister for a long time. I did, when I was in high school, I did move to Notre Dame Academy, so I was there for those 4 years and became a sister in 1967, and was a teacher for 16 years, a principal for 6 years, and then helped start Double Arc Center for FASD.
It's amazing, and we'll talk more about your work as we get into our discussion. Thank you, sister. And finally, Amy Remer, who is a 3-time cancer survivor, an amputee, and a motivational speaker. She also is a wonderful woman of faith, and Amy just walks around with this glow about her. You can't help but want to listen to her and get to know her and talk to her when she walks into a room. She's that kind of person. And I just feel so glad we came together at a Victory Center event, and I just feel like she's my long-lost sister, right? Like it just happens like that. But tell our audience a little more about your journey as well, Amy.
Well, I grew up out in the country in Liberty Center. My husband and I now live in Swanton. We have 4 kids. They're 12, 10, 8, and 5. So they keep us very, very busy. But I'm a speech pathologist, and I've been teaching at the University of Toledo. But in 2017, I was diagnosed with myxofibrosarcoma, which is cancer of the soft tissue. And I had a tumor growing in my left upper arm. And I went through chemotherapy, surgery, radiation. 2 years later, in 2019, my cancer came back, and I went through another surgery, more radiation, and then in the dreaded 2020, they found 2 more tumors, both in the original tumor beds, and basically they said your best chance at beating this once and for all is to have what's called a 4-quarter amputation, which basically means they take your entire arm, your shoulder, your clavicle, and your scapula off. And I said, I can be a wife, I can be a mom with 1 arm, so let's do it. And that was 2 years ago.
She tells the story with great positivity and optimism, but it is not easy. She makes it sound easy, but it hasn't been easy. But this girl is amazing. And if you ever want to need to know how to do something with 1 arm, that is your girl. She's got videos on YouTube. She shows people how she figures out how to do things.
It's pretty incredible. And I don't know, I have 2 arms and only 1 child. She's got 1 arm and 4 children. So I really am just always in awe of everything that she's able to do. But we are so thankful that you all are here today. And in the interest of shining, what does that mean to you, and how do you see yourself kind of lending your strengths to your team members or to the community at large? And not to always pick on Allison first, I'm going to start with Wendi on that question.
So to shine really means to be your authentic self. And for me and my coworkers, it's to help them to be the best workers that they can be, however I need to do that. I am in a supportive role. I am a servant leader, so I have a servant leader's heart, and so for me it's always about, what is it that I can do to help to make them better every single day. And I did the same thing with others in the community, other leaders, others that I might mentor, however I can do that, family members, whatever. And so it's from a place of, I just want people to be themselves, because when you're yourself, you are your best version of yourself. And so that's how I do that.
I love that answer. Amy, what about you? What does it mean for you to shine and to share what you have with others?
I think that it's easy to shine when you're on top, but when you are going through something difficult and you're down in the dumps, to be able to step out and shine in those moments, I think is where we can be really inspiring to other people. And so, every day is just a choice. I think we all have a choice every day of how we want to respond to the circumstances in our life. And, we can't always control everything that's going on, but we get to choose how we respond every day. And I think if you respond and you choose to respond with positivity and joy and hope each and every day, that's when you can really shine and encourage other people who might be going through a difficult time as well.
We've talked about that, you and I have, and about the example that you're setting, not only for others in the community, but also for your own children at home. And that was something that was really important for you to have that mindset as you went through your amputation.
Yeah, we all know, anyone that has children or knows a child, that children feed off of the adults around them. They feed off of their parents. They feed off of the role models in their life. And I have 4 kids. I was coaching softball when I was in the middle of coaching softball when I had my amputation. And I remember thinking to myself, what do I want them to see me? How do I want them to see me react to this? And that was important to me, and I knew that if I could push through and if I could be positive and if I could be okay, then my kids would be okay, that the kids that I was coaching would be okay, the kids that, my kids' friends, everyone that I was in their lives, they could look at that and say, wow, she's okay, so we can be okay with that, and we can push through difficult times, we can push through hard things.
You should see her play softball. It's really amazing, and no kid on her team, because she coaches, will ever be able to say, I can't do that, because she says, yes you can, I'll show you how with one arm, right?
They still try. I can't say
She's like, I got no sympathy for you, buddy. Right? Which is pretty incredible. Sister, how did you come to be so moved and compassionate about fetal alcohol syndrome, and what drove you to want to make a difference in that field?
Wow, that's a great question. I think I love children, and I loved teaching and working with children. And when I was asked to start this new program with other sisters, I thought, yes, I can do that. It's going to be helping children. And the passion I had for helping children, particularly those who have the disabilities and symptoms and concerns related to FASD. And then to work with parents to help them understand fetal alcohol spectrum disorders and help be a good listener, a loving listener for them, to help them to know that they can be okay. And a lot of times parents will say, I'm done, I'm just done. And then to help them rejuvenate them in order to continue to raise their child, it's quite a struggle.
So it is a lot about the children, but also about helping the parents to learn how to navigate that very difficult challenge.
And helping them to understand how to respond differently.
Yes.
Because a lot of times it's just yelling at them, and that's not helping.
Yeah.
It's like trying to figure out, what is this child trying to tell you by her behavior? And how can we work with that to make a difference for that child?
And you really have been a trailblazer in this. I mean, you got involved in this before anybody really had a name for what to call this, right? So that has to make you feel so good too, because it is something that is a lot more, people are a lot more aware of it now.
Right. Yeah, and it was named in 1973 in Seattle, Washington, by Ken Jones and David Smith. But it takes a long time for that information to get out to the public. And so, when we first started, we had never heard of fetal alcohol syndrome. And it was like, then we started doing presentations, and all of a sudden, the information started coming back to us. Like, oh, we are making a little difference here. We are helping people understand it. And I think probably the most important message is, how can we help women to avoid alcohol and other substances during their pregnancy?
Mm-hmm. And Chief, I'm going to kind of keep it on the child subject for a moment, because you do have a child that has a lot of special needs, and you have gone through a lot of medical procedures with your son, and his issues are things that are pretty rare issues as well. And I know we all kind of struggle as women with being good moms and good employees, and just balancing and juggling constantly. When you've had all that pressure and, you've needed to be there, and surgery is coming, and all of the special things that you have gone through, how have you been able to balance that and still have your career and be promoted and work your way up to the very top where you are now?
It's been difficult, and one of the reasons, though, that I was able to do that, and I forgot to mention this earlier, so don't tell him. My husband was a firefighter. He's retired now, so the schedule actually allowed us to be home with our child. One of us would be home, but the flip side of that was that we would only see each other every third day for part of a day, right? So we did that for 8 or 9 years, and that allowed us to ensure one of us would always be home to care for our son and make sure he had everything he needed. So, our relationship sacrificed to a point. However, he's now retired, and I call my 50s housewife, and no disrespect, because so that's great.
I love that.
And, for me, work and school and things like that were kind of a good distraction going through those things. Like, my son, during those early surgeries, was in the hospital, and I literally remember being down at the Ronald McDonald House in Columbus, and I was taking I didn't take organic chemistry or something, and I don't know anything about chemistry. So I remember doing homework and studying and doing that stuff while I was sitting there, while my husband was over sitting with our son, and it was a nice distraction, and it kind of, I don't know, made me forget, but it distracted me from what was going on. But, my message to people is that you can do that, right? I mean, that you can have this obligation at home, you can raise your child, and you can still have it.
Probably closer to 7,000. We did in just the first year of the pandemic about 875,000 meals. So but we had such an outpouring of support from volunteerism to funding. I promise you, for 6 weeks straight when the pandemic started, every single week I had a funder call and say, we've got X amount of dollars for you guys, because we know food insecurity is an issue. We know that kids are struggling in our community. I'm so grateful that relationships were built before that and deepened during the pandemic.
Yeah, that was amazing. Sister Suzette, you were called at a very young age to become a sister. Would you mind just sharing a little bit of your journey, your calling? Because you were a teenager. Were you 14 years old when you came to the Sisters?
What was that like, and what was that process like for you, knowing that that's where you were headed?
I was pretty young, I mean, even before 14. I loved the sisters. I was taught by the Sisters of Notre Dame, and there just was this calling within that it was like it kept urging me to join. And one of the kind of a funny story is I became an aspirant, which is a young person aspiring to be a sister. And they had a special come and see day at Notre Dame Academy for the aspirants. And my mom wasn't real keen on it, so I just asked her if she and my dad could drive up and take some of the other girls. And so at the end of the program, there was you could sign up in the library. So I grabbed my mom's arm and said to one of the aspirants, "Where's the library?" And I just took her to the library, and we signed up. I never imagined that this would all work out, but it's like, and I remember saying to God, if you want me to do this, you got to make it work, because I feel like I should be a sister, so I just need your help. And God has worked through my life, all my life. His provident care has just been amazing.
I just think about being 14 years old and having the maturity and just the sense of self where you knew that that was really a calling for you, and how incredible that must have been. And then looking back on all of these things that you've been able to accomplish, and what a vehicle that's been for you to be able to impact people in such a profound way.
Yeah, it's been an amazing ride, and hopefully many more years.
Yes! We're planning on many more, Sisters, Suzette, for sure. Amy, I want to talk to you just about, because you have a profound faith as well. And you have said several times that without that, you would not have been able to get through this. So talk to us a little bit about how your faith has helped you and also deepened as you've gone through these trials and tribulations.
Sure. So for me, I rewind a little bit in my life. I had faced a lot of trials even before my cancer diagnosis and before my amputation. My husband and I lost our first baby when she was only about a month old. We had a miscarriage shortly after that. We had another child with special needs. So we had faced a lot of different trials and struggles. And I think I went through, I had a very solid faith growing up and foundation of my faith. But I think that once you realize that you're never done growing in your faith, and you think you have this solid foundation, and then something happens in your life that, I don't want to say forces you, allows you to dig deeper and to really, to really lean on God and rely on God to get you through that. And I think He allows us to go through those trials because that's what He wants. He wants us to deepen our faith. And so He allows us to go through those trials for that very reason. And I love the saying, He's been faithful before, He'll be faithful again. With everything that I've been through in my life, by the time it came to my amputation, I could look back and say, in that moment of losing our daughter, in that moment of our son with special needs, in that moment of even my cancer diagnosis, I thought, how in the world am I going to get through this? But here I was looking back, and I could say, I could see the faithfulness, and I could see the good that had come from a lot of those really difficult times. And so if I say to myself, He's been faithful before and He'll be faithful again, I know that no matter what I'm going through now, He'll make good from that. And I think for me, there was a point, really when I was diagnosed with cancer, there was a point where I guess I would have told you before that I had fully surrendered to God. But there was a point during those initial days of finding out that I had cancer where I literally said, I'm done asking why me. God is writing me this story. He's writing everyone, each one of you, a unique story. And I basically just said, this is my story. I'm going to figure out how I can tell it from, and I get to choose how I tell it, right? So God's giving us all these unique stories, but we get to choose how we tell those stories. And I knew that God wanted me to share my story, and I knew that this was, I love Esther 4:14, you know, perhaps you were made for such a time as this. And that verse rings through my head, you know, that's a shortened version, but it rings through my head daily. And I was just like, perhaps this is what I was made for. This is what God made me for, and I'm here to share that story so that hopefully I can inspire and encourage someone else who's going through a difficult time.
And I don't want to gloss over, you also had a very impactful and fulfilling career as well. So tell us a little bit about that also, because that's been a big part of who you are as well.
Yeah, I mean, I'm a speech language pathologist, so I've worked with babies all the way, you know, through all age spans. I have been teaching at the University of Toledo, and in that moment, you know, I think I was at the University of Toledo. I've been there for 12 years, so that's a different type, that's a different group of people that I was able to have an impact on, right? And I was able to speak, you know, my faith into, you know, in not so many words, but to live out my faith and to be a shining example, hopefully, to these students who, you know, those years of our life, right, 18, 19, 20, you know, 22, 23, 24, those years are sometimes really difficult. They're a really difficult time where a lot of people feel lost and maybe they don't know where they're supposed to be and if this is the right path. And so I used that to hopefully inspire them in that way. And this was all before my cancer and before my amputation and all of that. But, you know, God takes us on different detours. I think Dr. Mona said that, you know, it's not a straight path and it's this zigzag path. And I've come to realize that if God is your navigator, right, like if he's your MapQuest or whatever you have, your Maps app, He will show you on those detours. Sometimes it's actually more of an amazing path than you had planned for yourself, and you just have to trust in that.
I do not know the courage that it would take to run into a burning building and bring somebody out on the other side. And I can only imagine, though, that there is a great element of faith in what you do every single day, knowing that you're going to be able to make it out of that building when you rush in there, Chief. So how has your faith impacted you and what you've been able to accomplish?
That's a great question, right? So, in my work and professional life, my faith has helped me get through many things, right? So I faced a lot of adversity at work. I was almost killed. So I was hired a year, and I fell through a floor, and I was almost killed at work. Mm-hmm. And so for a lot of people, they may have said, you know, this is not for me. I got burned. I had to get skin grafts. Was injured. All this stuff. But instead, I was like, okay, you know, this is terrible that it happened. Kind of like what Amy said. This is terrible. However, I'm going to take this and use it as a learning experience and realize that I got through this, and I'm going to continue on and, you know, carry on with my career and, you know, be a better person for it, right? Be maybe more understanding, more empathetic. And it's the same thing in my personal life. My son was born, and right away had to have emergency surgery, had to have heart surgery, and I was like, well, why me? Why do we have to deal with this, right? I just want to have a healthy baby. And it was hard. It was really, really hard. But looking back, those things and those challenges that I had to deal with in life, they made me a better person. They made me a more resilient person, a more empathetic person. They made me the person that I am today that is a good leader of this department because I don't sweat the small stuff. I take things as they come. The things I can control, I will control, but I realize that, you know, God has a bigger purpose for us. And so while we may not like what is happening in the moment, we have to believe that there's a reason, right? We have to trust in God that He would not give us more than we could handle. And that's hard. That took me a long time to come to terms with, but it really has helped me in both my professional and personal life navigate these challenges.
We all have kind kind of plans for ourselves, or maybe we have ideas about things we would really like to do, but we might be afraid or intimidated by doing that. So I'm going to ask each of you to address this question about any advice, or how have you pushed through when you were afraid or intimidated to do something, or any advice you could give us as we kind of navigate our own journeys. Sister, I'm starting with you first.
Well, let's see. Well, you know, the one time I thought I was kind of felt intimidated was when I had to talk to a couple parents when I was a principal, and I just made myself as big as I could. Stood my ground, and sometimes, you know, when I'm struggling, it's like, I can do this, and always God is with me, but I can do this, and that's helped me through many things. Just remembering that, you know, I can, and I'm not gonna back off or get down. I was in 2 accidents, and still some challenges with that. And so even when walking, and I can walk, and I'm grateful, but it's still, I think I can do this.
Yeah, sometimes it's just us reassuring ourselves, right? Or trying to find that confidence to do something that we might not have the confidence to do. Amy, what about you?
I think for me, I learned what it really means to take one day at a time. I think we say that a lot, and we say one day at a time, and we use that phrase often, but it really made me understand, you know, when God says he gives us strength for today, that's because he doesn't want us to worry about tomorrow or next week. And so a lot of situations for me, especially after my amputation, I'm looking at the rest of my life with one arm, one shoulder. What's that going to look like? What is my life going to look like? And I started to realize that if I focused on today, that was bearable. But if I looked at the rest of my life, it was overwhelming, and it was really, really difficult. And so every day, sometimes it's not even each day, sometimes it's each hour, each minute, right? Every moment, if you just focus on that and you don't worry about all the other things, it's a lot easier to handle, and it's a lot easier to push through that. And someone gave me the best advice right before, it was like 2 days before my amputation. I talked to a friend of mine, and someone had told her this advice, and she shared it with me, and I'm sharing it with you because it's the best advice I've ever been given, and so simple. And she said, don't let your worries and your fears and all of that, don't even let it build up throughout the day. Don't wait till the end of the day to give it to God. Stop yourself in the moment, give it to God. Because anytime you let it build up, that's when it becomes too much. That's when it becomes too hard and unbearable. And I'm telling you what, there are days where 100 times a day I stop myself in my tracks, and I say, this is yours, God. I can't do this without you. I can't handle this. And he tells us to bring it to him. And I do that over and over and over. And as I have learned to do that, I realize that it's really lifting, and it's really freeing for me to face whatever it is that I have to face on a daily basis, because I can do it. I don't have to do it alone.
Yeah. Cindy?
Similar. You know, it's recognizing the thoughts that really cause us in our minds to think that we can't do something. And so I lean heavily on my faith, and I lean heavily on a couple of scriptures. One is I can do all things through Christ, who strengthens me. And the second is that with God, all things are possible. Really, it's with God, nothing is impossible. And so when I think of those things, I think, he's already given me everything that I need to be successful. And so if I can just have the courage to step into it and get the voices to quiet in my head and allow his voice to be the dominant voice, I'll be fine.
It was super scary for me to leave television after doing it for almost 30 years. And I didn't really have a plan, because it kind of came up like my contract was up, and I was just like, my daughter's in 8th grade, I'm not being a good mom. I need to, really think about that, those high school years, she's going to be gone soon. It had to be so scary for you to leave that law firm. And what was the tipping point that just said, you got to do it, girl?
I wasn't sleeping. My doctor was like, if you don't change what you're doing, you are going to be dead soon. So working myself into the ground, for what? Having all the money I needed, for what? Doing all of these things, and my soul was still hollow. Couldn't do it.
Yeah. And Chief?
There's so many thoughts in my head right now. No, it's a good question. The way that I get through things is a lot of, what everybody else said. Taking things as they come. But for me, my personality is I'm optimistic, but yet realistic. And so I feel like I can do anything that I want to do. And I know it's hard to believe, but I don't take no for an answer, right? So if I want something, I'm going to get it. So that's where my friend, Deputy Chief, serves on the audience here. Yeah, I think that's the only way to be, but I also use reflection and my faith. Like when I was considering putting in for this job, I wasn't going to put in for this job. I was a battalion chief. I'd been a battalion chief for a couple of years, so I skipped a couple ranks to get here. And I thought, why would I do this? Like, so much time, so much stress. Like, am I the best person for the job? And it was because people came to me. So my peers started coming to me when they knew the position was going to be vacant, and they started asking me. And after enough of them asked me, I'm like, why do you want me to do this? And they said, well, because we think you'd be great. I said, okay, but why? And it was very humbling to have my peers come to me and say, we really want you to come in for this job. Because it's not something I ever thought about. But I literally spent months thinking about it and thinking, wow, is this really what I should do? How's it going to affect my family? Am I the right person for the job? Can I do a good job? And all those things. And then ultimately I decided, well, I think I can, so I'll put in for it. And then here we are.
Yeah, here we are. How scary was it when the mayor called and said, will you be our new chief?
I wish I had recorded that conversation. Experience you have with the mayor. So he's great, but sometimes we have awkward conversations, especially when he doesn't know people, so that's fine. So he called me in the morning. I was at work doing my job at EMS, and he was like, hey, as it turns out, we have an opening for fire chief, I'd like to offer it to you. And I said, oh, that sounds great, sir. I'd be happy to do that. And then we talked a little bit, and he said, well, okay. He goes, well, congratulations, or condolences. He goes, I don't know which, but talk to you later. That's
okay, so which is it? Congratulations.
I would say congratulations.
Awesome. With these ladies and continue to talk, and I know you all will have a chance to say hi and ask the questions that you have of them out in the lobby. So I just want to thank each and every one of you for being here, for letting your light shine, for using your voices and your talents and strengths to help so many other people and to set such a great example for all of the rest of us, to take strength from. And that's another thing that's really important. A lot of times we don't even know the ripple effects we're having or what our example is doing for other people, especially women. And I think that it's just so incredible to have all of you sitting here. You all bring something so unique and wonderful to the table, and I've learned tons. I need to go back and jot down a bunch of notes now so I don't forget stuff. But thank you. Thank you to our panel for being here. Now, what I forgot, I probably wouldn't have forgotten if I was a Catholic schoolgirl, but what I forgot with Dr. Mona, we have a beautiful piece of glass that we gave to her from the Glass City to remember her time with us here from the Toledo Museum of Art. We also have pieces of glass for our panelists as well. And these glass pieces are super special. They are made by Sister Frances Penwell. And they're coming out for each of you to have a difference of our time together, and just to encourage you to just keep doing your thing, because you're all doing amazing, and we're so proud of you, all four of you. Thank you so much. All right, ladies, the bar is open. Dr. Mona will be outside to sign books and say hello in the grand lobby out there. I think that's what they call it, right? The grand lobby with the mural, so beautiful. We still have all of our exhibitors out there as well, and some snacks for you. So please enjoy the last hour of our networking here. Say hello to our panelists. And thank you so much for coming and helping us to have our first Shine event make Sister Carol's vision come to life. We hope that you will be part of the coalition, and love to talk to you more about that in the hallway as well. Carrie and your team, thank you so much for putting together such a beautiful panel, a beautiful speaker, and a great day for all of us. I'm going home rejuvenated and re-energized. I hope you all are too. We hope to see you again next year. Have a good